My artist was Laurel Hallow, specifically her album called Dust. She is based out of Berlin, Germany, but was born in Ann Arbor, Michigan. In 2012, her album Quarantine was rated Album of the Year by The Wire. Since then, she's made a lot more albums, including Dust, which came out in 2017. She said that when she moved from Michigan to New York to Berlin, her music like changed a lot and changed, which a lot of artists say like where you live really influences your music. She said specifically that when she moved to Berlin, it influenced the loose limb feel of her music, which you can definitely tell in her album. In the album Dust, she incorporates her own vocals, which many of her other albums do not incorporate. They just use sounds. But she also worked with other electronic artists, including New York LaFonda, London-based Klein, and Berlin-based Michael Salu. In an interview about the album Dust, she says, I wanted to have a positive sounding record for it to sound more relaxed and less anxious. She talks about how each record has created calmness and positivity in the songs, and you can definitely hear it that she's having fun and she's also using her music as a form of healing, which she talked about. But in the specific song that I chose called Jelly, there's a lot of upbeats and little drum rolls and that sound really happy. So I think her goal to make the whole album or this song really positive definitely comes through. Um, she also mentions that throughout the album, she takes a lot of inspiration from artists and artwork that she likes, and then she portrays them through her music, which I thought was really interesting that like you don't need to sample an actual song. You can sort of sample a physical piece of art that you like or anything that you feel inspired by. She even says that she feels inspired by like her dad's art, and then she portrays that. Um, Laurel mixes a lot of instruments throughout the album, including monochromatic drums and woodwind instruments, and then she samples things she finds or hears, like alien warbles or video game sounds. In an interview, they asked, so do you love video games? Like, you use a lot of their sounds. And she was like, no, I don't really like video games. I just like the sound. So I think that's cool that, like, you don't need to love what you're listening to, but anything that has a cool song or sound, just use it as a sample. She to sample, she even plays some of her own songs live first and then takes them to the computer, edits them, changes the way the vocals sound, and then samples her own music, which is cool that if you just are trying to find a specific like sound, just make it yourself and then sample it to how you want it. Um, she she experiments a lot with various drum beats and tests low percussive sounds. She focuses more on sound or texture and not harmony and chords. She talks a lot about like how she just wants all of her sounds to be separate but then to come together. And you can definitely tell that like there's so many sounds going on and throughout the album, throughout her songs, but then it all is like cohesive. Um, so I think that's a good note to like focus on each sound separately and then it will come together if you do like transitions. Um, when she uses vocals, she manipulates them to sound like she's having a conversation with herself, or throughout the album, you hear you hear like little bits and pieces of conversations. And she says that she wants to have the vocals to sound like just another sonic component and create a cohesive sound. And she doesn't want the vocals to sound like a strict division between synth lines or samples or texture. And she even said that she wants all of her vocals to be ugly and crisp, but to come together. In the specific song that I chose to listen to, Jelly, it opens with a series of clicks and jerks and the sound of chewing. And we even hear someone say, and you are a thief and you drink too much, which reminded me a lot about our sound walks and how like we picked up what other people were saying, and then even she uses this technique of like using her surroundings as a form of sampling, but then she also uses a lot of like echo and reverb. In her album, she takes lines and then randomizes them, like she takes lyrics that she's created and then finds the poetic out of something non sequitur, which we did in our poetry section. And then we hear lines like, what's the phone number? What's the password? Or she's once inspired by taking fragments of first surviving texts by archaic Greek poet Sappho and concrete poetry. And then she likes to think of her songs as a chaotic text. So throughout the album, we hear jokes and phrases, line fragments, phone messages, cinematic score samples, but then they're all mixed together with beats that she creates herself. So yeah, she uses a lot of things that she hears, which is what we do as well. So yeah, I really liked her music.